So thank you so much for staying here with us, joining on this panel with us, and two very ambitious and inspiring impact entrepreneurs. So you heard from the title that this is Changing Lanes, Roadmap to a Impact-Driven Business. So thank you both for being here with me and for being patient with the very long introduction. All right, so let's set the stage first. What do you think, or what does an impact-driven business actually look like to you? Maybe you can start with Jim. How would you define it?
For me, impact is about, instead of making money for the business, you're really impacting social issues and social problems. So for me, what I'm trying to do is really enable human flourishing in the very remote, very poor areas of the Philippines. In particular, there are 25 million people in the Philippines that have no electricity still in this day and age. We currently have 1 million solar users, but that's a long way from the 25. So we're going for 25 million people to have access to energy so that they can have better education, better livelihood, better healthcare.
And you mentioned that you're on track to reaching 25 million by 2032, right?
By the time I retire, yes.
All right, cool. So Dora, what do you think? What's your definition?
Yeah, I think so. Very similar to Jim. I think oftentimes the word impact gets, as you mentioned, gets thrown around quite a lot, and people have different perspectives on it. I think in the sense that what I'm working on is looking at how we can improve livelihoods of especially people who are not as privileged as many of us who are sitting here in the room, but also from a human perspective, but also from an environmental perspective, right? And I think nowadays when we talk about impact, everybody kind of typically jumps towards the climate change space because that's where all the funding and everything is, but I believe it's more than that. And personally for me, oftentimes when we say what we do at Thrive, I say we look at sustainability, but from the angle of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is kind of like what's needed in this world for us to kind of move on and everybody still be happy with how we're going to be living in the future. So yeah, that's impact from my perspective.
Okay. So Jim, when we spoke pre-summit, you talked about how your values and your mindset kind of shifted. You had multiple, like different eras in your life, right? Where in your earlier days, 20 to 40 years old, you were trying to maximize profits for yourself. So it was very self-serving. Whereas in 40 to 60, and I'm not going to review your age, I don't know what your age is actually, but from 40 to 60, it's more about maximizing the impacts and finding out what matters to you, but also kind of finding out what matters to the world and how you can improve the world. Do you want to talk a little bit about that awakening and how did that come about? What did it look like? And how has it kind of changed your life since?
So I would say that in my early days, first quarter, you're just getting educated. So you really start your career 20 to 40. And at that time, I guess I was following the traditional paths, right, that you see modeled in the world. And I went to business school, and so when coming out of business school, I worked for McKinsey, and basically we were helping our clients make more money, right? So it was about maximize profits. And I would say for myself, it was really what I valued were what I would call resume values. If it was good for my career, if it was good for my credentials, if it was good for my resume, I valued that. But really, I started making a shift when I started to, I would say, understand my purpose in life. And Mark Twain is reputed to have said that there are two most important days in your life. So the first one is the day that you're born, and then the second one is when you realize and discover what you were made for. Like, why are you here on this earth? And so I think that's what happened to me. I ended up climbing the corporate ladder to the very, very top. And then I realized that this wasn't really what was for me. And at that time, there was also a big explosion in our mall. And then we were having a lot of issues on the, I would say, political and regulatory front. And I realized that I was in a place that I wasn't really made for, right? And so I went through a process of discovery, and really it went back to my heart is really to help the poor and marginalized in the Philippines by empowering them, as we said, human flourishing, but doing it through business, doing it because that's the only way that you can make it sustainable and you can scale it.
Dora, your journey actually started with a rejection, and it was a rejection from Mackenzie,
Mackenzie.
right? Yeah. So you worked there.
I'm sorry.
She didn't work there.
I helped set up the Bangkok office.
So
You
very
should have called me.
so very opposite from Jim. Yeah, so right after university, I think it was like, but I was interested in, my first kind of like interest in this space was like education. And that was back in university. So in Thailand, if you go out into the rural areas, it's very, very different from the capital city. Like you have schools that there's a single teacher who's teaching, 4-year-olds all the way up to 18-year-olds, 60 students, 12 different grades, and it's one single teacher doing all of that. So when you see stuff like that, and that was like back in my university years, I think I was trying to kind of fast track my life, and I felt like doing consulting would be a very good way to fast track all the learning, so then I can, do other stuff that I would be interested in. And now that I look back, I think I'm quite lucky that I got rejected, because then it sent me off on a totally different angle of like, okay, then now what do I want to do? So I jumped into the startup world, and then in that process, started getting exposed to the world of social enterprises. And I think that for me was an eye-opener, because initially my path in life that I thought before was, I'm gonna get a good job, fast track myself, get a good job, make a lot of money, and then I'm gonna open up a foundation, right? To do good, But then when you realize, oh my God, like you can actually do business and create a positive impact, I think that was when that opened up my eyes, and I was like, okay, yeah, like whatever this is, like I want to understand it more. So I jumped into a social enterprise space and did more work in the education sector, and then actually found that education is really hard to scale. I think anybody working in the education space will know that. You're a very loud yes. And that's why after doing that, then I was like, then I want to jump into tech a little bit more to understand scaling, like how technology can be used to scale things. So education and then tech, full-on tech for a couple of years, and then jumping into the ed tech space. And then, as you mentioned, I found some things that worked, some things that didn't work when I was working for a big corporation, and then decided to open up my own company to figure out, to kind of take the pieces that I really liked in all of the different works that, the different areas that I've been working in, and see if I could inspire more of the younger generations in Thailand to kind of jump into the social impact space, to jump into the sustainability space, because I feel most people think that they want to do it, but they feel that making money and making impact are two very different paths, that that it will never collide. But I want to, just let people know that it is possible to do that, and that's why jumping into creating Thrive and working with that.